just worth kicking the tires on.
Well, here he is, all-time Kings icon, the one, the only Jerry Reynolds. Happy Friday, Jerry. How are you, sir?
Yeah, happy Friday, and really just enjoying. I was listening to you two, the dynamic duo, no question about it. Bringing energy, knowledge to the Sacramento area, way more maybe than they even deserve. I don't know.
Wow, how about that?
We're just trying. It's just a Friday.
Just all you can do is give what you got.
Exactly.
That's right. First things first, Jerry, what did you think of the Dame to Milwaukee trade?
Well, I don't think it's as big a win as some people do. Dame's certainly a better offensive player than Jrue Holiday, but he's not nearly the defender.
Right.
And then of course there was some loss of depth by the Bucks. Right. So having said that, the Bucks had the best record in the league last year, and with Jrue Holiday and those guys, and of course they got beat in the playoffs, but mostly because Antetokounmpo wasn't healthy.
Yeah, Jerry, that's really the thing that I've been thinking about most when it comes to this deal. Obviously, it's hard to turn down a mega talent like Dame, but it does feel like Milwaukee takes a major step back on the defensive end. Jrue Holiday is maybe the best or at least most physical perimeter defender in the NBA. Do you feel like Giannis and Brook Lopez are enough, behind Dame and I guess Pat Connaughton would be their other guard? Do you feel like Giannis and Lopez are a good enough big man combo to kind of make up for the loss of Jrue?
I'm not sure. Really not. I'm just not convinced that they're better. They could be. Lillard is such a terrific offensive player.
Right.
If he and Giannis really do fit well, and Middleton, they offensively they could be a notch better than they were, but they're not going to be as good defensively, and so we just have to see how that plays out. And when you really get down to it, if Giannis is healthy, they're a threat to win it all. If he isn't, they're not going to, regardless of whether Lillard's there or not.
Jerry, do you see a potential fit here? And it looks like from what Sam Amick is reporting today, the Kings have looked at it, and for whatever reason, they don't feel like it's something they want to pursue. So I'm not suggesting that they're wrong, but I would think that if I were involved in management there, I would really be interested in Jrue Holiday. How about you? If you're running the Kings, would you be taking a long, hard look at that right now?
Well, I think there's so many moving parts there. His salary, you'd have to move so many guys in order to, good players, good young players to get him. I guess, there's no doubt he's better than, everybody not named Fox. But, I guess in the long term, I'd agree with I wouldn't move that direction. He's got a couple of probably high quality years left, much like Lillard. And he's going to be a free agent, I understand. So you got a chance to be a rental.
Right.
And so my only real desire for Jrue Holiday is I want him to go to the East.
Yes.
Yes, please.
And stay in the East.
Yes. Stay there. Go there and stay there, please. Jerry, that really brings up, there's so much, there's been so much movement this offseason. Golden State looks completely different. Phoenix is going to have a new look. Really, just tons of moves and maybe even more moves on the horizon. As a blanket statement in the NBA, would you say continuity is overrated, underrated, or properly rated?
I think it's underrated. I really do think it's very important. As far as, generally speaking, reasonably young teams like the Kings or others in the past, Denver comes to mind, that stay with a lot of the same people, coaches, they tend to get better. And you can't know what you don't know until you've kind of stayed with guys a year or two. Right. And then you'll have to change around the edges. There's no doubt that the Kings going forward are going to keep the exact same top 10 guys forever. Be surprising if 2 or 3 changes aren't made again next year. depending on how they do. So, but your point's right. I mean, I think continuity of front office coaches and players, whenever possible, that's the right direction.
Jerry Reynolds, of course, with us here on Sactown Sports. We got word today, Jerry, that the Kings are expected to bring in Jaylen, Nowell, and Jeremy Lamb. And in a way, I was telling Chris, it almost reminds me of when Jeff Petrie brought in, after the lockout, when he brought in John Barry and Vernon Maxwell and hoped, hey, maybe one of them will be good. And they were both exceptional that year. What do you make of that? Is this just another sign that the Kings are, hey, they're serious about this year and they're looking for any way they can to maybe improve their depth, which is already improved over last year?
Yeah, I think that's all it is. I mean, I think that these guys are, NBA caliber players. So why not have a look?
Mm-hmm.
I think the important point is I think that they've strengthened their roster as it is.
Yeah.
So there's no downside in looking at a few guys. Maybe you'll get a surprise. I think the difference between Barry and Vernon and those guys is there really wasn't near enough depth.
Yeah.
They were the depth,
yeah,
as it turned. And so I think the Kings really have enough depth now so I'd be surprised if either one of them, were around come November.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, obviously, like with crafting a roster, it takes a lot of communication between coach and GM and, bringing guys in, or what I'm more curious about for when it comes to the final cuts, like when training camp's over and you got to make the decision between Jeremy Lamb or Jaylen Nowell, like who ultimately do you feel like in your experience has more say in those final roster cuts? Is that more of a GM decision because he brought him in and he has the bigger long-term vision, or is it more on the coach who is, seen that those guys work out through the training camp and has a more hands-on feel for his team, or is it really truly a happy marriage of both?
Well, you would love to have a happy marriage of both, and I think that's what the Kings currently have, much like the Adelman-Petrie situation of years ago. But to your question, the general manager has the most authority. Now, in my opinion, he should never get rid of a player that the coach wants or bring in somebody the coach doesn't want. And that's my philosophy. I mean, it just makes no sense, because if you do that, the coach is going to be looking sideways at the guy that was forced on him.
Right.
And that sort of thing. So the sport to work long term, you really have to have guys on the same page. They might slightly disagree on players, but in most cases, if that is the case, I think the GM would say, well, 11th, 12th man, who do you want? And we'll go down that road.
Not to ask you to, name names or anything, but I'm guessing general manager Jerry had an idea on a player or two that he wanted to bring in that maybe this or that coach didn't want. In the end, general manager Jerry realizes, yeah, I was right. You should have brought him in, but you acquiesced and did it the coach's way, right? That probably happened.
Well, it did, and it happened the other way where I was wrong. So, you just can't, you can't just take it one way. I mean, I definitely would have been right on a certain couple things, I know, and I was wrong on a couple things. So, it's kind of like drafting quarterbacks. It's not a science.
Jerry, how good of a sense do you feel like you had for how good or bad your team would be at the end of camp? Or is that just kind of a preliminary view and then it could change throughout the year? Or usually do you have a pretty good idea of what your team's going to look like?
I think you have a real good idea coming out of camp. Obviously, the preseason gives you a little better idea, but there's a certain level of players that you have to have in order to win in depth. And, it's anybody that's kind of been, around a little bit, you look at your roster and you say, okay, this guy's pretty good and that guy's pretty good. But the third one, well, he's not very good. and the Lakers' third guy is worthy.
Yeah.
So, So, I mean, unless you're just a damned idiot, you can kind of figure it out a little bit.
Yeah, good sense.
How many times do you think you'll have to see Sasha play before you have any idea what your nickname for him will be?
Yeah, I may have to go, half a year. I think it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
But
because he was worthy. He's good. Whatever you say, you want it to stick, right? Because he's probably going to be pretty good.
I think he's going to be good. I really do. I think obviously, he can really shoot, and that's pretty important in today's game. But he has good instincts and really moves well without the ball. He might become Slasher Sasha.
Hey, see, already off
Slasher
to a great start.
Yeah.
Jerry, I have to know, what did a Jerry Reynolds training camp look like? Are we talking 2-a-days? Are we talking like gassers to end practice?
Well, yeah, in those days, we had 2-a-days for a couple of weeks.
Oof.
Yeah, we worked them and might as well just had one a day. In some cases, just say, hey, guys, get your uniforms and show up game night. But no, really, we in the old days, and it was every team did it that way. Would have at least basically 2 weeks of 2-a-days, and then no days off. If a day off would be one practice, so it's very different. I mean, I think players, to their credit, come to camp in better shape in today's game than they did, back in the 80s. They basically use camp to get them in shape in preseason, that sort of thing. Today's game, they're in shape, so it's a matter of, just kind of getting them fine-tuned with their offense and defense. So, and I think that's better. I think what they're doing now is a better way of doing things.
Jerry Reynolds, of course, our guest here. Did you guys ever train in an exotic location? Did you train in Hawaii with the Lakers once?
Yes, we were their guests, and we were treated that way. Bill Russell was the GM, and I think he wanted to go to Hawaii, so which I was okay with it. We needed to train somewhere, but I noticed that we had kind of an old high school to train in. The Lakers, had the University of Hawaii Arena or something. So it was a good experience, and I was gonna say, in all honesty, we trained for a couple of years at Yuba College in Yuba City, and I preferred that, to be honest with you.
Wow. Said no one ever.
No one ever.
Yeah.
Well, the reason being, I mean, for the coach, it ain't like Hawaii. You don't have a lot of time.
Right.
So, it's like if you're going to be miserable, you might as well be miserable close to home.
I guess, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about, once the Kings start playing, I think we've touched on this, are other teams going to have looked at the playoff series against the Warriors? Are other teams going to try defending the Kings the same way the Warriors did? Is Domas going to have to figure out how to adjust early in the season to guys guarding him and giving him lots of room like Looney and Draymond Green did in the postseason?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, every team can't do it, but they'll probably there will be some adjustments. I think not only with Domas, but with Coach Brown, probably see less dribble handoffs, more screen rolls, things like that. Mm-hmm. Which would change the dynamic a little bit. So, and then, of course, the thing I'm worried about is not just that, but the fact that, Oklahoma City and New Orleans, teams that really weren't, part of anything last year, might very well be, depending on health, of course.
You think Holmgren's going to be pretty good this year?
I think pretty good's the right way. He's a highly skilled guy. Just watching him in summer league, he's physically, I think it's going to be a real adjustment for him. But the truth is, Oklahoma City doesn't need him to do a lot. If he could be a 10-10 guy, which I think he probably can, or 10-8, and then 4 or 5 assists, because he's highly skilled from the high post. So, he makes them better. But there's a 2 or 3 guys on that team that's better right now and will be better all year for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jerry, we appreciate your time as always, especially on a Friday. Before we let you go, I was just wondering, you as a guy who's made some of these trades, how do you think Portland did? Of course, it'll depend on the Jrue Holiday thing, but how do you think Portland did, all things considered, with this Dame Lillard trade, and given that they were kind of over a barrel?
Yeah, I think they did well. I really do. I mean, because I think that Jrue Holiday can bring something back very good. They got a really good young center out of it. Moved a lesser center and Nurkic. I like that. They're rebuilding, and so Ayton fits their rebuilding prospects. With Scoot and Jaden Sharp and all that. So I like what they did. And I was listening to one of the ESPN geniuses this morning, and they were upset that that somehow Portland didn't trade with Miami. I said, we talked about this before. It's like, who were they going to get?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You're going to give Lillard just because he wants to go there? Obviously they weren't going to trade Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo, and without either one of those coming back, it makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
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 And they had nobody else. They have nothing. They lost their starting guards to free agency.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it just ticked me off, to be honest. It's like, really? Portland has an obligation to their fans and franchise, and certainly they did very well by Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
His chances for a championship are better in Milwaukee than they probably would have been in Miami. But, anyway, it's like, Portland's paying him $60 million a year, so send him exactly where he wants to go and take nothing back. That's a great plan.
Right. Well, enjoy your weekend. I know you're excited about your Chiefs, and I can't imagine how you're excited you are about Taylor Swift being in all the Chiefs games. That must make it even more.
I'm not happy about that. Just I'm going to tell her to move on, leave Kelsey alone. And but by the way, you guys. Just one little reminder on game managers. I think one of the best game managers as a quarterback I ever saw was a guy named Tom Brady.
Yes.
I don't know, exactly what his success level was, but he could really manage a game.
He sure could. He sure could. Especially those super games, those Super Bowl games.
The biggest games.
Those real super games he's really good at.
Yeah, pretty decent.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Enjoy, you guys. Take care.
Thank you, Jerry. Have a good weekend.
Slosher Vazenkov, maybe?
Slosher?
Yeah,
Slash. Yeah, that's a tough one. There's something there. Slasher Vazenkov isn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I don't think it's perfect, but like you said, he's gonna need some time to perfect it. Maybe
this is an important one.
Yeah, I still to this day have everything written down. So whenever Jerry's ready to drop the Sasha nickname, I'm ready to add it to the list.